Hi, my name's Mike Childs. This is where I live with my partner and two daughters, 37 Francis Street, 1895 terraced house, solid brick, was very cold when we bought it and not very eco-friendly. I'll talk to you about some of the things we've done to try and make it, improve it over time. We were renting the house when we first moved in, so when the landlord sold it, we put it up for sale, we bought it, which meant that what we couldn't do was have it as a vacant property and do lots of work in one go. We've kind of insulated it over time and improved it over time. That was also kind of a reality of cash. We used all our money to buy the house and didn't have any spare cash to do anything else. But we did start off by getting some basics sorted. So in 2003, we bought the property in 2002. In 2003, we insulated the loft with some sheep's wool insulation. It cost around £200. We did it ourselves. Its payback period was probably around 3 years' time. There's a guesstimate, but it makes a big difference. Obviously, heat goes upwards, so a lot of it was going straight out through the loft. And then we saved up some money because we knew we wanted to get some windows and doors. We chose to get some wooden double glazed windows, high spec ones, so argon filled in the middle, to make sure we could make as big a difference as possible. We went to the fantastic Green Building Store in Huddersfield, and they made us the 8 windows and the 2 doors and fitted them as well. So much more eco-friendly than using PVC windows and doors. More expensive though, but also will last a lot longer. It cost us around £11,000. There'll be a significant payback period for that, probably over 100 years. But obviously, you know, homes are for comfort as well, aren't they? And they made a big comfort given the existing windows and doors were incredibly drafty and cold. We then moved on to get some solar PV panels fitted on top of our roof. It's a 3.3 kilowatt system. It's a small system. We've got a small roof. The front of our house points south, so good for solar PV. It cost us something like £8,000 to get them installed back then. We were incredibly lucky. At the timing we went for it, there was a government grant of £2,500, so we got that, and we got a feed-in tariff of £670 a year for 20 years. We're going to get that. And we made some electricity bills savings. In fact, the panels pretty much produced all the electricity we needed, although obviously there are times when we were exporting it in the summer when we're not using much electricity, and times when we had to import it during the winter when the panels weren't making much electricity, but we needed it. The payback for those solar PV panels is probably around 8 years. So, you know, we're going to make 12 years worth of profit in that. That's around £7,500, £8,000 profit. Nowadays, if you fit solar PV panels, you get a payment from an energy company for the electricity you're producing and exporting, and the payback period is probably now around 20 years before you're completely done. The PV panel should last longer than that, 40 years perhaps. But it's a long payback period, of course, isn't it? We wanted to insulate the walls as well. A solid brick house, as you know, has cold walls, and we also had some mould problems on one of my daughter's bedrooms and other parts of the house as well. We considered solid wall insulation inside, or insulated walls inside, internal wall insulation, but that with very small rooms that would have taken up a lot of space. So we kind of opted for a suboptimal, which is this Semper Tap thermal wallpaper. As you can see, it's about a centimetre thick. That's not me fitting it. That's an image from the company. Two people can fit it relatively easily, and we did it room by room over five years. Actually, I think we started before we got the PV panels and finished a few years later. It made a noticeable difference. It used to be to sit next to the wall and feel cold, and you don't anymore. But we haven't been able to keep track of our energy bills to make a proper estimate of what the payback was, because our energy consumption has changed so much because of lifestyle changes, having children, for example, and me working from home more. We're guessing the payback is around 20 years. But again, good quality of life, comfort benefits from it. And then last, big investment, and most exciting perhaps for tech heads like me, was getting a heat pump fitted. Now a heat pump basically sucks energy out from the outside air and uses it to heat water to heat your home. It's used across Sweden and places like that. It works even if it's minus 20 degrees outside or 15 or 20. Remarkably, it's still managed to extract heat out of the air out there and bring heat into your home. There was always a lot of talk about whether heat pumps are noisy. Our one certainly isn't noisy. It's a Mitsubishi Ikodan Ultra Quiet, I think it's called. We also got a hot water cylinder fitted at the same time, so it could do our hot water, and slightly larger radiators fitted as well, because the hot water that it produces is not the same temperature as a gas boiler, so you need slightly larger radiators, or may need slightly larger radiators. The cost is around £11,000 up front. The government have got a grant scheme called a renewable heat incentive that gives some money over a 7-year period. For us, it will give around £550 a year for 7 years. They're moving to a grant system very, very soon on that, but again, it won't cover the whole cost. Our energy bills are the same, because although the heat pump extracts heat from the outside and runs on electricity, for every unit of electricity it uses, it produces 3 units of heat. But electricity is 3 times the price of gas, so to provide the same amount of heat, it's costing us the same in terms of electricity. We use a tariff from Octopus Energy that enables you to time things to use a cheaper rate of electricity. Our hot water, for example, heats in the middle of the night. The payback, well, there won't be a payback for that. It'll cost us around £7,000 probably, although it will make a massive savings to our carbon footprint, reducing them very considerably by at least 40 or 50% from our heating from our homes, and probably 60% or more. So well worth investment if you want to cut your carbon emissions very significantly, much higher than anything else we've done. There are some things I'd still like us to do. So apparently there's this wonderful invention called the Q-Bot, which is a little robot that can go underneath your wooden floors and spray insulation. Quite like to do that in our front room. The rest of the house has solid wall floors, because we've got engineered wood flooring down. I don't want to rip all that up to pull up all the floorboards to put insulation in place. So it'd be fantastic to get that to visit. I'd really like a thermal image camera to see how well the Sempertap thermal insulating wallpaper is doing, and the windows and doors. And ultimately, you know, to make a bigger difference, you would get external wall insulation. Although in practice, I question how much difference that would make. Now we've got some internal wall insulation, and our heating is provided by a heat pump, and increasingly powered by renewable energy anyway, as the grid decarbonises. So, you know, but perhaps one day we'll get there. Some concluding thoughts from me. Well, firstly, comfort matters. Many of the things we've done is because we want our house to live in that's warm and comfortable. The windows, the doors, the loft, and the thermal wallpaper are all worth doing it, regardless of any economic payback from bills, for example, and also from a health perspective. Living in a cold, drafty, damp house with mould on the walls is not good for your health. So it's worth doing this stuff anyway, even if it doesn't pay back, if you can afford to. The solar PV, we were umming and ahhing about whether we should use solar thermal to heat our hot water. It's easier to decarbonise electricity, as we can see, with a fantastic growth of offshore wind and as well as onshore wind. But we've made that choice. We feel less guilty using the very generous profit we got from the solar PV to fund a heat pump. We are making quite a lot of money out of that from the taxpayer, but then we are recycling it straight through to reduce our carbon. So hopefully that's a good thing. The heat pump itself is great. It makes a real difference. As I said, it makes the biggest difference in terms of carbon emissions. Right now, it's unaffordable for most people because you need that upfront money and you need to spend, more money than you're going to get back on it. Obviously, dealing with our energy and decarbonising our energy use and supply is a really big step forward in terms of trying to leave a green lifestyle. But there are other things as well. The household itself is a no meat and dairy, no meat household. I occasionally eat meat if I go walking in the hills, but very rarely. And we don't use that much dairy. We use alternatives where we can. We don't own a car. We hire a car when we use it, which is on rare occasions. We don't really go flying. I haven't done for donkey's years. And our thermostat is set at 18 degrees centigrade, not 180 degrees centigrade, as it says there, and all help make a low-cost difference to our environmental footprint. But mostly, the reality is, we're a green household. We're doing our best. We're willing to invest in it. We're willing to go to the effort of doing it. But not everyone is. We need to recognise that. And the reality is, we all need all homes to be well insulated by 2030 if we're going to do anything like meet any reasonable carbon reduction targets. That's going to involve government expenditure. And regulation. So the government has introduced a new grant scheme for insulating homes. It's only for 1 year. It's not fantastically generous. So that needs to be a 10-year programme, and it needs to be more generous. We need to fit 10 million heat pumps. There are very few fitted across the country now, because we really do need to decarbonise heating and move away from gas central heating, fossil fuel heating as well. And heat pumps are the best route for that. As I say, grants for that need to be, they are probably going to come in, but they need to be higher because they still won't cover anything like the cost of them. And areas like the private rented sector, then there ought to be regulations there. I work for Friends of the Earth. I'm lucky to work for Friends of the Earth. And we've been campaigning on this agenda for some time, working with other environmental groups, working with business as well. Government is perhaps beginning to listen to some degree. I mean, Rishi Sunak did put in place this home insulation programme for a year. They are listening to some degree. But in reality, we're not going to get what we need unless we're all hollering and shouting and encouraging our MPs and the government more broadly to take action to help make sure our homes are fit for the future. Our housing stock is dreadfully insulated compared to the whole of most of the rest of Europe and even countries, as I say, like Sweden and Finland and Norway, and we need to get a speed on in terms of making sure that we're delivering this decarbonisation that's needed, because we're not going to hit our carbon reduction targets without that. We need to do up our homes, and we need to make a difference in other areas as well. Anyway, I hope that's useful and interesting. Happy to take any questions in a chat box or online or in any seminars. And good luck with any of your activities. So I think that's me finished talking. Time for questions or thoughts or comments, I think, isn't it, Ivana? Or how are you doing? Are you doing Celine and then questions?
Yeah, no, well, we've got about 5 minutes or a bit for questions just for you, because I thought that sort of breaks it up a little bit and makes it a bit easier to handle them. I just want to say I probably can't help on the Qbot, but your community energy has a thermal imaging camera which we lend out, and you never know, maybe we could talk you into holding a housewarming party for those floorboards. I've written a blog post because we've done a housewarming party on the floor that I'm sitting on right now, and it's made a huge difference to the room. If anything, I'm a bit too warm today. But I do appreciate that having fancy floorboards, does make it a little bit more challenging. But let's see. What
I can see some questions.
question?
Housewarming party is not quite in at the moment, Ivana, as well, so we'll have to perhaps see on that one day. I'd love to see it. Oh, there's some comments there, aren't
It
there?
looks like it's mostly comments. Yeah,
So
a bit
the
about the
value on the
Q-bots.
isn't it? Yeah, nowhere near as good as internal insulation from Andy.
Yeah, I think the issue around Q-bots with sort of spraying insulation under the floor is, yeah, coating power cables and other things that may be better left alone, because with powered cables, they could overheat if they are insulated.
I think it's got a camera as well, so it's controlled from a laptop, somebody outside, an operator outside a laptop, who can steer around things, so I'm sure they'd come up.
But that one then create cold spots, so you might get thermal bridging. Andy would probably be better at explaining all this. I should reveal perhaps that we've got Andy Walker here, offshore insulation, so he knows quite a lot about that sort of thing. So if you want to come in on that, and maybe explain why Q-bots might be, should be used with caution, but they do sound great.
Yeah, I'm happy to say just a few things. Thank you, Mike. We've met before, Mike, at I think the Friends of the Earth offices in Leeds. We were talking about various things. We share a friend in Simon Bowen. It's what a great set of things you've done to your house. That's really inspirational. That's fantastic. That's quite a lot of money you spent as well. That's a lot. I do insulation, and I encourage people to reduce heat loss through the fabric as a first step before going to renewables. A lot of people that I've worked with don't seem to mind the 4 inches lost. I mean, you've lost an inch with the Semper Tap. Another 3 perhaps wouldn't have been too noticeable. And then
you'd have had to chat to my partner then, Andy.
And I'm very happy to do that. I have quite a line in persuasion. Okay.
This sounds like this is getting into a discussion about walls. If we could just quickly either say something about the Q-bot or carry on with other questions, because I can see this could go into quite a bit of detail.
Yeah, the Q-bot. The very early prototype years ago was called the Robo Squirt. And I think Mark, it's a dreadful name, and I think they changed it. And I think I'm very concerned about it. It will produce air tightness as well as insulation, but I'm not sure it's going to give you enough of a depth of insulation to give you the kind of thermal performance you need. And I'm very worried that it's going to cover the ring mains and the shower cables and cables to cookers, which are rated to be able to dissipate heat when running at full load. So I have a bit of a reservation about
that. Okay, there's a question there. What is the output of your heat pump?
11 kilowatts, something like that. 11.2. Okay.
And then Segi was asking if you'd confirm the output of the solar PV array. Was it 1.3 kilowatt?
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's a question from Shannon. How would the underfloor insulation affect the underfloor ventilation? So maybe that's one for Andy again, although I could say that, yes, you do need to definitely think about that and make sure that ventilation does not get blocked.
Well, Ivana, you can answer this. You know the answer to this one.
Yes, you do need to make sure that you still get plenty of ventilation underneath. So make sure that no air bricks get blocked by it, which is exactly what we've done in this room. And yeah, as long as you make sure of that, then the insulation will work a treat without causing any problems. There's a question which I think is about whether we could do bulk orders and more housewarming parties in York, so, and other things. So I think that's definitely something that your community energy is kind of looking into. So knowing that there are people out there interested, then that's very helpful. And yeah, if you get in touch with either St. Nick's or your community energy, if we know that there's more of us out there interested in this, then it's something that we could look into. Unless there are some more questions.
There's a question on why we didn't
Segi is asking, so just one more. Yeah.
Why
did you go for 1.3 kilowatts rather than for
PV array? That's all we could fit on our south-facing roof. So would have liked more if we could, but it would have to be from north-facing, which is not very effective, obviously.
Okay. I think that looks like we're nicely exactly at past. So we'll thank you, Mike, very much. Very interesting, I think, and inspirational. So yeah, quite a bit of food for thought there. And now I'll invite Selina Whitehead to talk about her experiences of renovating a home with the added challenge of having to cope with floods. So
well, it's a challenge and an opportunity, really, because we did get the insurance money, so various costs that would have taken us decades to afford ended up happening through insurance money. So but yeah, thank you very much. I'm very aware that I haven't quite been as organised as Mike, and I don't have all the facts and figures of what we've done, but I'm very, very happy. If anybody's got any specific questions, that I'll make them available to Ivana afterwards, and yeah, and I will let you know, because I'm sure that we have them somewhere. So so this is our home. It was built in about 1852, I believe, and it was 3 one-down cottages, workers' cottages, and so there's lots of windows and there's lots of chimneys. So the first thing that we did when we first moved in, it was in a very, very poor rundown state. So the roof needed entirely doing. There were sort of birds flying in and out, and there was no insulation in the place at all. So it was really quite a bit of a shell of a building, really. So we put insulation in the loft, and we redid the roof, and we also put double glazed windows in. Probably not as high a spec, but sort of that was the sort of first thing that we could do to try and keep some heat in, because it is a cold house because it's exposed on several sides. We were told when we bought it that it had flooded in 2000, and we were told that that was a once in 100-year experience. However, life proved not quite to follow that statistic, and in 2012 we flooded, which put a different sort of prospect on it, really. So this is a picture of the house when it floods, and we're in a bit of a dip. So the green that you can see in the far distance, we're just by the Millennium Bridge, and actually when the house was built, about 12 steps down to the river level, and they landfilled it in the 1950s with glass and tin, and so we're now in a dip. So we not only flooded, but it kind of sits in the as a lake, really. So as you can see, this is like the full flood before the greenery shows in the background. So when we flood, we really flood. So it goes up to about 1 metre down the back of the house. So when it happened in 2012, then it was a bit of a shock to the system. I think my kids were 3 and 5, and it definitely caught us by surprise somewhat, really. The power of water inside the house was quite something to believe, really. So it was very, very shocking to us to realise that it had the power to lift up the fridge freezer inside and overturn it, and it moved, furniture around, and it's quite an incredible thing to see, really. It's quite amazing to see. So inside the living room, you can see like the whole sofa's moved around, and this is the carpet that's completely lifted up. So it was pretty revolting, and yeah, quite a lot of smell, a lot of stench. We didn't get the sewage, but even just having river water through your house is obviously not great. So I'm just showing you these pictures really just to give you some idea of what what it was like. They're a little bit of a mixture actually between the 2012 floods, and then we flooded again on Boxing Day of the of 2015 floods as well. So this is me somewhat exhausted sitting outside with all of our stuff, and I think what then began to dawn on us was just the phenomenal cost of stuff that needed to be replaced. And what I realised was that just the waste that's involved really, and partly there's waste involved because some things have been destroyed, and partly there's a lot of waste involved because the insurance companies aren't really interested in replacing things or repairing things. They're just interested in new for old and new for old. So certainly in the first flood, I ended up being encouraged to throw an awful lot of things away that in hindsight really just needed washing properly. But I think I was a little bit traumatized at the time, and I hadn't been through it, and I didn't quite have the confidence to go, really? And you've got somebody there going, you know, you've got young children and they could get this, that and the other. And I think once I'd sort of calmed down a bit, I kind of realised that it was a bit of a nonsense. And if you put something in boiling water, or you put strong cleaner on it, then things will get clean. So this sort of thing of having all of so much stuff out in the garden kind of really made us think about what we could do to lose less stuff next time, really. And so these that we've taken. So the first thing that we've done, the thing is to lift the sockets so they're all part way up the wall. It's now saying my internet connection is unstable, so somebody please do wave at me if I go off. But and we also after 2015-2016 floods, we put tiles up the wall as well. So that should make it easier next time in terms of just sort of and washing through. We also put in a stainless steel kitchen, and again, this was just one of the really frustrating conversations with the insurance company. Was after the second flood, and I was looking at options for kitchens, and the advice, frustratingly, on even on flood form things is just buy really cheap carcasses, and then you can get nice doors, and then you change your carcasses every time. And I was like, God, the waste of doing that potentially. There was like 3.5 years between those floods. Potentially that I could be replacing my kitchen like that frequently. That just seems ludicrous. So we looked at sort of various options and came up with stainless steel, and it's hugely more expensive. I mean, it's twice the price of the previous kitchen. And I said to the insurance company, can you help? Can you, I will never claim for a kitchen again. We are going to be insured. You're part of Flood Re, which is the that cover private homes for flood. Be cheaper for you, and then there's no waste. Anyway, no, can't do that. Frustrating. We found the money and we did it. But yeah, that kind of attitude I think is really frustrating. Anyway, stainless steel kitchens. In theory, the guys from Sheffield came up to put it in. In theory, they all come out. In practice, I've forgotten what we were supposed to do. So come the next flood, either somebody's coming out from Sheffield, or I suspect we will just be rinsing it all down. And I know the bottom bits come out, and we can kind of clean behind there. But it should mean that the return to normality is quicker. The other thing we did in the living room was we got a carpenter in, and we built these. So they look, when they're down, you can see by the fireplace down, they just look like tongue and groove panels, but they lift up with aluminium legs, and they was flood trestle tables. So the February just gone, we had 4 weekends in a row where we really thought we were going to flood, like every weekend. This was levels rose, and then they fell, and then they rose, and then they fell. So that we had sort of almost a month of a lot of things being put onto the trestle tables. So that was obviously clearly not essential, but for us it's quite a narrow house, and there's not a lot of space, and it just saves everything being lifted upstairs or out, easier just to have in the same room. So that was quite a nice thing that we did as well. Since the last flood, we also were part of the Environment Agency's. They got some money allocated to repeat flood people to try and help build their resilience. And we were very fortunate to receive, well, we didn't receive the money actually, no, we didn't receive any money at all, but we received a lot of goods in kind. So various people came from Flood Divert, and they've done various around the house. That they've sort of sealed all the little holes on the outside of the house, and they've sprayed some water repellent on the outside of the house. But they've also put in these amazing doors, incredibly easy. So the white bit to the side stays in, and then the doors just slot in. And there's also one of those as well inside, separating the kitchen from the room. So. Well, you don't. I've no idea whether it works or not. We should wait and see. But yeah, in theory, it should massively reduce. So the idea is not necessarily that we won't flood again, because I think that's pretty unlikely. I think because we've got the ooze and the water coming from Germany Beck. For those of you who are York based, the water comes from both sides. So we flood on all three sides. I think it's highly likely that we won't flood again. But the idea is if we can keep the level of water down inside, and out faster than the water comes in, then the damage will be less and the recovery time will be quicker. That's the theory. As I say, you'll have to invite me back when we'll have to tell you if it works or not. So other things that we've done then, as I say, we had insulated when we put the double glazing in, and we put solar panels at the same time as Mike did actually. I don't think that we got that initial grant. I think we might have just missed that. But we've definitely had quite a generous fit-through over the years, and it's definitely paid for itself in that time. So that's been great. So so yeah, sorry, I should have gone on solar panels. And we've also got an air source heat pump. So I'm slightly confused at Mike's cost. I do think it very much varies from house to house, because we are fairly confident that we will get the money back from it, partly because this green grant home scheme that's running now, and partly because of the repayment, and also partly because we were on oil. So I do think it's really worthwhile checking out for your own individual properties as to what your different costs are, because our feeling is, looking at the cost, that it would most definitely pay for itself, and then we would get the lower costs from the oil is obviously filthy environmentally, but it's also really expensive, and we put in extra solar panels, so some heating costs obviously when the solar isn't working. We also will have mitigated quite a lot of the cost of running the heat pump through having the extra solar panels. The other thing that we did was, when we put in the solar panels, they were just solars, and that's probably 10 years on, I should think, from getting the new solar panels. So we got what's called an iBoost system, and that just converts the hot water. The hot water sort of helps top it up, so that you're always sort of putting in any extra solar energy into heating up your hot water. So that's been great as well, and the system's been fantastic. I mean, I was a little bit, you know, we were unsure about it, and we went around to look at Mike's beforehand. Radiators, I was worried, were quite big, but really they're not now. I mean, the older style were quite a bit bulky. They're a bit more of like a storage heater looking. The new ones that we've put in, noticed the difference really, and the hot water's been great. So yeah, thrilled to bits with that. And yeah, I think that's me.
Wow, you've been on quite a journey there. Yeah, as Adrian said in the chat, I think we can all agree. Real respect for your resilience through all these floods, and lucid explanations of what happened and how you coped with it. Adrian was just 2 houses down from the 2015 flood levels, and that was traumatic enough. So let alone being inside all that. Yes. So thank you ever so much for sharing your experiences. And he says he would have moved. Has anyone got any questions for Selina? There. Yes. So Rukmal is asking if you received a grant from the Environment Agency.
So it depends when you're talking about, Rukmal. So after the 2012, we received £500, sort of an immediate kind of looking after you grant. I have to say, flooding at Christmas, there was an outpouring of moods. I had somebody knocking on the door saying she's got workmen arrived from Leicester and did I have anything that they could do. It's just kind of like flooding at Christmas was definitely was definitely a help in that respect. And actually George Osborne at that time then gave us a grant, which I think came via the Environment Agency. And that was there was immediate money available. There was also money available. There was a lot of money raised at two Ridings Community Fund. You know, there was all that money raised after the Christmas floods, and the Two Ridings Community Fund ended up administering it, and they gave out money for resilience measures. And then the Environment Agency are the ones that have been managing this latest sort of resilience measures. So they have helped pay for a paddle pump inside, which will help to get the water out, and these doors and various things like that. So yeah, I think probably we've had various grants from the Environment Agency. As I say, this latest one, we didn't. I think it ended up being about £8,000, but we didn't see a penny of it. It all went through the Environment Agency to flood divert. Whereas on the previous one, I think it was even as much as £5,000 that George Osborne gave after in 2016 for resilience measures, and that came to us, and we had to show that we used it for resilience measures, which we did.
Great. Any other questions out there? I wonder if it's worth mentioning, I'm not sure if you said how long it took you to move back after the first time, and why.
6 months each time, 6 months, yeah.
Was it each time?
Each time was 6 months. And I think that the last time that we moved out, the kids were by then I think 8 and 6 and 8, and we really disliked it. I mean, we had a really tough 6 months. We didn't like the rented property. Everybody felt just out of sorts. We just all felt deeply fed up, and I think we kind of made a position. We were going to do everything that we could do to not move out for that length of time. So the idea is very much that we might move out very temporarily, and then the idea is that we will just try and do it differently, really. So we'll just try and get the place cleaned through. We hope there won't be as much drying, because the drying process itself can often take 8, 10, 12 weeks to dry the property out. So the idea is that we will almost live the process, really, and you know, it'll be completely unenvironmentally sound because we'll have the windows open and the heating on, and the humidifiers around to kind of keep the place dried out. But we can't face being out of the property again for another 6 months. It's just too much, and hopefully that it will be. Hopefully the work that we've done, obviously if these flood doors work, I mean, you know, who knows, we might be back in, you know, within a week or so, which would just be amazing. But as I say, I guess knowing York, it won't be too long before we find out whether it's worked or not. So yeah, we shall see.
Gosh, well, I sure hope it will take some time before you find out. There's a question from Jesper, how you have positioned the air source heat pump relative to the flood levels. So did you have to kind of put it higher up than usual?
Absolutely. So the house is kind of on a slope. So the living room floods up to about 1 metre. And the air source heat pump is at the top of the garden and it's raised up. So even if it was at the ground, it wouldn't be affected. But we have raised it. There is a marginal issue inside of where the boiler is as to whether that's high enough. We hope it's high. It's sort of the way that the house was positioned. It just had to sort of fit in. So yeah, I'm more worried about that pump itself, but hopefully it'll be fine. But yeah, the pump outside should be very, very safe.
Glad to hear that. Adrian is suggesting, yeah, going Yorkshire wide for bulk buying. That's definitely something we're looking into. And cooperative insurance company. I haven't heard of Nature Save that he's suggesting. Does anyone know of good cooperative insurance companies? I must say my experience with cooperative insurance itself is a little bit mixed. They seem to have a view of increasing your costs every year the longer you stay with them, and then basically you just have to take out a new insurance in order to get back down to a sensible amount of money, as we discovered this year. So I don't know if anyone out there has good suggestions for insurance. Otherwise, unless there's any more questions, maybe we'll move on to the next. There is one more from Jesper. Are you eligible for Flood Re? So I think you've talked about it, but if you want to maybe say a bit more.
Pretty much all homes, I think there might still be an issue. I'm not quite sure that they've resolved it for people in mobile homes. I know that was an issue. I don't know if that's been resolved or not, but certainly for if you're in a regular house of some description, then Flood Re will flood you, will do all private properties. So yeah, lots of people. I can't get the insurance through. I often just haven't come across Flood Re. So Flood Re can just be any of the main insurers, really. And the idea is that the government pays for the flood part of you. Not that you know about it, but the government is behind the scenes paying for the flood part of your insurance company to continue to flood you, because it did at one point. It was a grave concern in 2016 when I was looking to you and was ringing insurance companies and saying, you know, can we be insured for everything other than flood? Like, ignore the flood, just fire and bad, normal household things. And everyone said, no, you flooded, we can't insure you. Until I kind of worked in my way into the Flood Re thing. So it's a really strange system that you'd be penalised for everything. You couldn't get hold of any insurance. Even if there was an exemption for flood. But anyway, yeah, the Flood Re is pretty wide now and can cover everybody.
Great. I think there's a few comments about effectively natural flood management, which is something that St. Nick's is involved with, and rebuilding soils as a way to kind of hold flood waters in. I know you've got a garden, and that probably takes some share of the flood waters you get. But I think we will now actually move on to Emily and Lauren from Yorkshire Flood Resilience Project, because that might answer some of those more technical questions about support for people who have flooded. So thank you ever so much, Selena. That was brilliant. And I'll see if I can successfully share my screen and invite Lauren and Emily from the project to do a double act on. Over to you.
I'll just quickly mention, I do apologise, I'm not going to be on camera immediately because I'm having a few signal issues at my end, and I think that, well, if I don't have the camera on, you don't all sound like Daleks and I don't sound like a Dalek, so I'll give it a bit of space for a while and see if it catches up with me. Okay, Emily?
Okay, so hi everyone, we are the Yorkshire Flood Resilience Project. We're here tonight to speak to you a bit more about us and also how we can help you to make your home more flood resilient. So I'm Emily Howes, and we've also got here my colleague Lauren Davidson.
Hello.
We are one of 3 DEFRA funded Pathfinder projects nationally, and we're working to raise awareness of property flood resilience, also known as PFR. There are 2 other projects running in Devon and Cornwall, and also in Oxford and Cambridge, although each of us are taking a very different approach. Yorkshire Flood Resilience is led by the City of York Council, and all 3 Pathfinder projects are overseen nationally by the Environment Agency. We're also working with our partners at JBA Consulting and the Integrated Catchment Solutions Programme, known as ICASP, which is a partnership between the Universities of Leeds and York. JBA and ICASP are evaluating our project based on the views of the Yorkshire public about PFR before and after engaging with our range of resources. We're also co-developing a flood resilience demonstration centre in partnership with the Living with Water project, which is based in Hull and East Riding, and we're working with them to share insights and opportunities to get communities involved with flood resilience. We'll be working with 4 main groups to raise awareness of the benefits of PFR. The first is local communities and residents like yourselves, and also businesses, landlords, community groups, and anyone else who owns or occupies property. Then we've got the property, trades and building sector, including developers, contractors, building suppliers and outlets. We're also targeting financial influencers like mortgage lenders and insurers. And finally, we're also working with flood risk management authorities, including all 14 of Yorkshire's lead local flood authorities, water companies and the Environment Agency.
Okay, can I have the next slide, please?
Sorry, I forgot to say slide.
I was going to say, I was wondering if you wanted me to move on.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. Just, yeah.
Okay, we're aiming to develop an understanding of flood risk and property flood resilience amongst the residents and businesses of Yorkshire. A key element of our mission is to encourage positive attitudes and behaviours towards PFR, whether that's checking whether your home is at flood risk and what you can think about doing about it, starting to explore different products online, or even considering having a property flood survey. As climate change worsens, flooding is predicted to become much more likely in the future. The UK's most recent climate projections estimate the floods, which only have a 1% chance of occurring now, could happen every year by 2050. The Met Office has found that over the last decade, the summer months that are already 17% wetter than they were in the previous 30 years. Sorry, that was wrong, sorry about that. The summer months are already 17% wetter than they were in the previous 30 years. With flooding looking increasingly likely, PFR should be something that people consider as a proactive step towards preparing their homes for flooding, and not just something to think about afterwards. Through our range of resources, we aim to provide information and guidance that you will need to make carefully considered choices about making your home flood resilient, and to stay informed throughout the whole PFR process. We hope to give people the understanding to protect their own properties from flooding and the confidence to take decisive steps towards flood resilience. Just as you might protect your home from fire or theft by installing a smoke or burglar alarm, PFR gives you the power to reduce the threat posed to your property by a much stealthier thief, one that seeps under your door and through your gaps in the walls to destroy all the items you value. Whether PFR is new to you or not, it's natural to have questions and concerns. Informed by feedback from the Yorkshire public, we are working to understand and address these concerns by providing information and guidance, not only from us, but also from the Yorkshire residents like you, who have made their homes flood resilient. Even after the Yorkshire Flood Resilience Project is finished, our mission is to have a long-term impact by informing research into the best methods to raise awareness for PFR and its benefits, which can then be used across Yorkshire and beyond into the future.
Next slide, please. So how are we going to do this? Our partners at JBA and ICASP collected feedback and views about PFR from Yorkshire residents, businesses and local authorities. We've used this information to develop a range of online awareness resources to provide information about PFR. We're developing a project website, www.yorkshirefloodresilience.co.uk, which we're looking forward to being launched later this year. It aims to provide a central point for Yorkshire-based flood resilience knowledge and resources, both from our project and our partners. We'll be providing signposting references to help you source additional information on a range of flood-related subjects. We've got a range of downloadable resources, including flood emergency packs and flood plan templates, and there'll also be a link to access further information and guidance about PFR best practice and the range of products and installers available, so that you can select suppliers and products for your home with confidence and stay fully informed throughout the installation process and beyond. Whatever questions you might have about PFR, our website will have plenty of useful information there to help you. We'll be sharing a range of local case study videos and blogs from members of the public and from flood professionals, sharing their experiences and offering flood resilience tips. The real story information pieces will share interesting facts about local flood risk and different flood defence approaches across Yorkshire. We're creating publicly accessible online training to introduce the key concepts of PFR and what you'd need to know if you're considering PFR for your home. And we're also developing a series of animations to show what PFR looks like when it's installed. You'll also be able to find out more about the latest flood-related news, as well as information about the most recent developments and exciting new technologies that could help you to find the PFR solution that works best for you. We'll be sponsoring a series of YouTube episodes about flood resilience called Hazard and Hope, which will be hosted by the Environmental Design Studio. These will include how-to tutorials for making your home or business more flood resilient, as well as case studies from residents and businesses around Yorkshire.
Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Most importantly, why are we doing this? As you've seen from Selena, the benefits of having PFR in your home are clear in the event of flooding. PFR can help you to save money on costly flood repairs and replacements in the long term by reducing the risk of flood damage to your property. You could simply wipe down, disinfect and carry on, rather than needing expensive strip out and repair furniture and building materials. This is also more sustainable from the environmental perspective. Think about how much waste would be generated by having to dispose of and replace furniture, carpet, plasterboard and other interior features compared to being able to clean, dry and keep the existing ones in place. PFR also reduces the duration of flood recovery by reducing the likelihood of needing major building works, so you can move back into your home quicker after a flood event. Installing PFR is unlikely to increase any disruption. Many individual measures can be installed in a single day and could be as simple as levelling your doorstep to attach a flood barrier. If your home is flooded, the flood repair process is an ideal time to consider PFR, as building work is already in progress. Making your home flood resilient can provide you with a huge amount of reassurance for those at flood risk, as PFR enables you to reduce the risk to the possessions you value most, as well as the risk of having to spend months in temporary accommodation away from the home and your community.
Next slide, please. So there is some work going on near you at the moment relating to PFR. The Environment Agency are currently running a PFR scheme in York as part of their 5-year plan for the city. If your home is eligible, you could get a property flood survey for free. This will be carried out by a professional flood surveyor, and it will determine whether your home is suitable for PFR and what products would be best. The surveyor will create a report detailing the range of options. If you'd like to talk about this further, the Environment Agency will be running drop-in sessions with themselves and the supplier to discuss the best way forward. If, after this, you'd like to proceed with the measures recommended in the survey, a supplier will measure up your home and work out how much the measures will cost. A grant of up to £7,500 is available to install resistance measures, the PFR approaches which aim to limit or delay water entry into your home. After the measures and costs have been agreed and signed off by you and the Environment Agency, the products will be made bespoke for your home and installed. This should only take a few days, depending on the measures that are being installed in your home.
When the Environment Agency are doing their flood risk management work, they divide areas into what they call flood cells, each of which has its own characteristics. The PFR scheme is being delivered across flood cells covering Acaster, Malbis, Bishopthorpe, Clementhorpe, the Foss confluence to Fulford, the Groves to Haley Terrace, Kingstaith, Neyburn, Osbaldwick, Queenstaith and Skeldergate, Scarborough Bridge to Lendal Bridge and Tanghall Beck. If you live in any of these areas, check with the Environment Agency to see if your home is eligible for their PFR scheme. Other eco-friendly ideas for what you can do, maybe. Sorry, Emily.
Sorry?
So I thought you were going to say something.
Oh no, sorry.
Go ahead.
Lauren, sorry.
So I'm breaking up at this end.
All right, okay.
Sorry, everyone.
Oh, no worries, sorry about that. So PFR is a vital part of the wider flood risk management solution. It's also not the only thing you can do to make your home more flood resilient or sustainable. So sustainable drainage systems, often known as SUDs, mimic natural processes but in urban and residential areas to control surface water. This can reduce the risk of the water ponding in low-lying areas and causing flooding, or rapidly running over the land into nearby drains, sewers or channels which could easily become overwhelmed in heavy rain. Planting trees or shrubs in your garden can help to reduce runoff from your property after it's rained. Having more plants on the ground surface can help to slow the flow of water over the surface and into local drains, rivers and streams because they increase friction. Leaves also capture rainfall which then evaporates off them, and the roots from trees can help to improve the structure of the soil around those trees so that more surface water can infiltrate into it and be stored. Although heavy rainfall can be a nuisance and sometimes even a threat at the time, rainwater harvesting can allow this water to be useful at other times of the year. You can harvest rainwater that falls onto your roof in a water butt, a small tank that you connect to your drain pipe. This helps to reduce the runoff from your property, and it can also help to reduce your water bills if you use it to water your garden or to wash your car later. Storing and using this water, rather than allowing it to flow straight into the nearest drain, helps to slow the flow of water into the drainage system during heavy rainfall. You could consider creating a rain garden by diverting the downpipe from your roof either into your garden itself or into a planter that has freely draining soil. These are a great place to grow plants that prefer wet conditions. Water that flows from your downpipe into a rain garden infiltrates into the soil instead of into nearby drains, which would leave the drains less likely to be overwhelmed and to back up in the event of flooding. If you're thinking about getting paving in your garden, you could consider permeable paving. Unlike normal concrete, this has lots of small gaps in its surface that allow water to infiltrate into the soil below instead of pooling at the surface. This can also help to reduce the runoff of surface water from your land. Beyond the scale of your own home, think about what you could do as a community to help soak up surface water in your area. You could plant trees across the wider area, and you could even work with organised groups on a larger scale to deliver natural flood management or SUDS projects.
Addingham is a village which is threatened by flooding from the River Wharfe and has 4 becks running through it. Addingham's residents have partnered with Bradford City Council, their local parish council and the Yorkshire Dales and Rivers Trust to work on a wide-reaching natural flood management and sustainable drainage project, which is delivering a range of SUDs into Addingham itself, as well as natural flood measures upstream. Can you have the next slide? There are many benefits to making your home flood resilient, but where do you start? Firstly, check to see if your home is at flood risk. The Environment Agency's website provides information about short and long-term flood risk and also allows you to sign up to receive flood warnings on your mobile device. Making a flood plan is a simple way to make sure you are ready if a flood threatens your home. Include key contact details such as doctor, home insurance and utility providers, as well as contact numbers for members of your family, and list simple steps that you could take, such as moving important documents to a higher level, raising furniture and shutting off your electricity. If you have recently moved to the area, you could try talking to your neighbours to see if they have actually experienced flooding. What was their experience and what did they do? Some communities have local flood wardens who monitor local water courses and drains and report back flood risks, as well as providing important information to emergency services and assisting people during a flood event. Check to see if there is a flood warden in your area. You could even sign up to become one if you wanted. Some communities with previous experience of flooding have local flood action groups who discuss local flood-related issues. So find out if there's one near you. If there is a lot of local interest in flooding, you could consider setting up one of your own if there isn't an existing group. If a number of residents in your area are considering getting PFR, you could form a community cooperative. If you approach some PFR providers as a group rather than individuals, you might be able to get a discount on the measures. You could also speak to your lead local flood authority as a community group to ask about potential sources of funding. Also, get planting. Trees and shrubs are a simple way to slow surface water runoff and make your garden look great too. You could plant plenty of water-loving plants and divert your downpipe to create a rain garden. Water butts are widely available and are fairly inexpensive, and they're a great way to slow, store and use water running off your roof.
Next slide, please. So there are many different steps that you could take if you're thinking about making your home flood resilient. So we're here to help. If you'd like any further information about PFR, you can visit our website, www.yorkshirefloodresilience.co.uk, to find out more and inform your next steps. We'll also be sharing flood-related news and campaigns on our social media feeds, so you can follow us online to stay up to date with flood resilience in Yorkshire. Also, if you have any flood-related events coming up near you, please let us know. We'd be happy to share these more widely and to encourage more people to get involved and make their homes flood resilient in your local area. If you'd like any further information or want to know more about the project, you can also contact us by email at yorkshirepropertyfloodresilience@york.gov.uk, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. You can also follow us on social media. So on Twitter, we are at Yorkshire PFR, and you can find us on either Facebook or LinkedIn under the name Yorkshire Flood Resilience. So thank you all very much for your time this evening. We hope you found our presentation informative. And does anybody have any questions?
I would just like to apologise for my technical problems. I apologise.
No worries, Lauren, it's fine. Thanks. Yeah. So Rukmal, I noticed that you asked about contacts, so I'll just type them in our chat so that everybody can see them.
I'll just add that I will, as a follow-up to the event, I'll be sending all the links on by email. So if you don't catch it from the chat, then you will get it in an email, and I'll include the recording or link to the recording. But now that we're a smaller group, I think we might as well just ask questions directly. So I think Selena, you had one.
Yeah, this is possibly a conversation for after tonight, but I attended numerous flood meetings after the 2015 floods, and I think one of the challenges that you've got is that there are a group of people in York who will be very open to discussing flood resilience, and I'm more than happy to assist in any way I can. I do think that there's a group of people who were so beyond furious at what they saw as a deliberate flooding in 2015 that they literally couldn't countenance if you told them that you were offering them £7,500 to make their home flood resilient. They were like, I don't care, we shouldn't have flooded, we should never flood. And I do think that that's going to be a real challenge for you, is like almost converting the area. It's almost like if I put any flood measurement in, the value of my house is going to go down. And there's no judgment or criticism of them, but it was just an incredibly telling difference from those of us who were repeat offenders, if you like, who were like, yeah, absolutely, to discuss resilience, what we can do, and those people who saw it as a failing of the system and were kind of like, don't even tell me there's even the remotest chance that I'm ever going to flood again. It shouldn't have ever happened. So I just think that there's still quite a lot of education and just that shift mindset that almost anybody would be worthwhile thinking about this, because yeah, there's a very, very different mindset, I think, that depending on where in York you are and what you perceive of as being a sensible precaution to take, and a kind of, if I put that on the front of my house, my property is going to go down 30, 40, 50 grand and I'm not doing it. So yeah, that's, it might not be a conversation for tonight, but I'm very happy to to follow up after the meeting.
No, we'd be very happy to speak to you about that discussion point, Selena, absolutely. I think we're very much aware how emotive a subject flooding is, And we've come across many instances where people haven't been happy with the way things have gone. And while we can't discuss the actions of individual councils, because we are talking to 14 of the lead local flood authorities around Yorkshire, we can guide people to the best sources of information and support for them. So if there is anyone concerned about their PFR and whether they should install it or not bother and what have you, we'll definitely provide them with the support we hope that they'll appreciate.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
there's definitely room for more discussions and I guess empathy to people and
Absolutely.
because flooding will only increase with the climate crisis accelerating, so it is something that even those who are not used to thinking about flooding will actually need to start thinking about. Jesper's made a bit of a comment, I guess, and but maybe we can turn it into a question, whether the Resilience Project actually gets consulted when planning applications are put in.
We don't as a project, although we're involved with the flood risk team at City of York Council, and they do, but as a project our main role is to raise awareness of PFR, so we're not involved in consultations for planning or anything like that.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, Jesper?
Not really. I suppose it's applications like that get considered purely on the tree basis of purely from should a tree be protected or not necessarily from what it does. So it's that influence that sort of consideration doesn't seem to get made by the council. I'm happy to share the link to that one in particular if anyone, if you want. But I'll happy to share that. I think there's a small enough group not to be seen as influencing if that works. But just to give you an example.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, people may want to react to that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I think, yeah, I agree with Adrian. It's good to know that this project is happening, that there is effort being made to kind of make people aware of the risks, but also the benefits, because yes, certainly flood management is an emotive issue and something that needs to be worked on, but there are ways in which we can all contribute to reducing the risks, being by planting trees or supporting green corridors, and all sorts of other ways. So encouraging neighbours not to pave their driveways over. Yeah, I think there's a lot to do for everyone, really. So thank you very much. Unless there are any more questions, which I can't see in the chat, in which case I might just share my screen one last time. And just to thank everyone. I hope that I have found it interesting and useful tonight. This was the, I think, our 7th probably York Open Eco Homes event. So we've showcased various ways in which we can make eco improvements to homes or make new homes much better, both for the inhabitants and the environment that we all share. If you'd like to see more things like this happening, then please consider joining or supporting St. Nick's in some way, by donation or spreading the word. We do actually have a monthly update specifically focused on zero carbon and climate and the climate emergency. So I'll send a link afterwards, and that's where I always announce events like this happening.